fuck you, nigga, 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 fuck you, nigga, 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 fuck you, you a nigga officer, fuck you, nigga, 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 I hate you, nigga, 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 fuck you, nigga, nigga.
How you gonna teach old dog new tricks? How you gonna learn some new tricks?
You called him an old dog. Well,
no, you are still agitating. I didn't say that.
No, he called you. I heard it. Didn't he say it?
What you mean a dog? You didn't call me a dog. You say you can't teach
He
dogs.
said an old dog, new tricks. He calls you a bear half the time.
I'm a what now?
He told me at the camp that you sleep with a teddy bear in your bed. Now, I don't make these things up, you know.
That's what he said.
This guy tells me this.
Let's be friends for 1 minute just to get him.
No, come on. Please. Come on. No, come on. No. This is my good...
Let's show him something.
Oh, what?
Let's show him.
No, I really don't think this is necessary. What time is it? It's,
Let me tell you something.
Oh, no!
Let me tell you something.
I will. Wait, can I say something?
Let me tell you something.
I must tell you.
I want to tell you one thing. All of the brothers out there watching television,
Yeah.
I don't care how mad y'all at each other, when it's come to one of these fellas trying to divide us, we must unite.
Oh, God. Wait a minute. Wait.
Umbrella. She's up. Whole nother level of shit you can't even understand.
What is good, my people? We are live back again with another episode of The Forecast. So recently, we all saw Bill Cosby actually get convicted. And the judge sentenced him to 3 to 10 years. And he has to do a minimum of 3 years. And they might even try to make him do all 10. We saw what they did to OJ. All O.J. Simpson did was steal his own football cards. Bill Cosby was accused of sexually assaulting a white woman. And when you living in a system of white supremacy, you could even say they went easy on Bill Cosby. But for me, at this point in history, you need more evidence than a white woman's story to convince me. Just based off history, white women have always used rape as a weapon against black men. They would tell them that if they don't do what they say, they'll falsely accuse them of rape. And you'll probably end up castrated. I mean, white women have gotten black cities burnt to the ground. Tulsa, Oklahoma, what happened in Black Wall Street? It started because a white girl said some black man touched her in the elevator. The massacre in Rosewood, Florida. It started because some white girl said a black man raped her, so they killed all the black people in the town. And it also had to do with the hatred that they had for seeing them prosper without white people. But the catalyst was a white woman lying about rape or lying about being assaulted. This year alone, there have been 2 white women arrested for falsely accusing black men. Now, they might not get that much of a punishment, but that is one improvement we can thank our ancestors for. 50 or 60 years ago, that would have ended up as another Emmett Till. But at the same time, that white woman, Carolyn Bryant, will never be arrested. She'll probably never see a cop again for the rest of her life if she's still alive. But there's no statute of limitation for murder or accessory to murder. And it wouldn't be double jeopardy because they never charged her. With Bill Cosby, they called the first trial a mistrial, and they did it again. And hit him with the charges on the last possible day that they could. And they labeled this 81-year-old man going blind as a violent sexual predator. And he definitely can't move like he did in 1978. And the judge was even talking down to him, pulling out Bible scriptures and all. And he was getting so much pleasure from telling them how much of a fall from grace it was. And that no one is above the law. And you had Gloria Allred and all of the accusers out there celebrating. And meanwhile, you have this 34-year-old white boy, Justin Schneider. He kidnapped a woman, choked her until she was unconscious, and then masturbated on her. And then the judge gives this white boy a free pass.
KTVA 11's Daniela Rivera joins us with the outcome of the case stemming from a graphic sexually motivated assault in August of last year. Daniela.
Well, Joe, we do want to warn our viewers tonight that the details of this case, they are graphic, and they might be upsetting to even our adult viewers. When given the opportunity to speak today, Mr. Schneider said nothing about the impact his actions might have had on his victim, but highlighted the positive effect this case has had on his life.
This can never happen again.
The outcome of Justin Schneider's case is, in a word used by Judge Michael Corey, breathtaking. He was charged after a woman told Anchorage police Schneider offered her a ride from the gas station in Minnesota and Spenard to Muldoon, but instead brought her here, a dead end in a residential Turnagain neighborhood, where he choked her unconscious. The victim saying she thought she was going to die, then awoke to find Schneider had masturbated on her. According to court documents, she told police Schneider said he was never going to kill her. He just needed her to think that in order to achieve satisfaction.
We tried to call and call are not available. That was the message, though reasonable attempts to make victim contact was made.
Today, his victim is absent from the courtroom, and so is any mention of remorse.
I would just like to emphasize how grateful I am for this process. It has given me a year to really work on myself and become a better person and a better husband and a better father, and I'm very eager to continue that journey.
All right, thank you, sir. Appreciate those comments.
Schneider struck a deal with the state, a 2-year sentence with 1 suspended, but he'll get credit for the year he spent at home with his wife and children on an ankle monitor. Prosecutor Andrew Granick says he agreed to the deal based on Schneider's enrollment and progress in a treatment program and an expert's assessment that the risk of Schneider reoffending is low.
I hope it doesn't happen. That's the reason why I made the deal that I've made, because I have reasonable expectations that it will not happen. But I would like the gentleman to be on notice that that is one pass. It's not really a pass, but given the conduct, one might consider that it is.
Judge Corey accepted the deal, noting his decision was based on a hope of rehabilitation.
Mr. Schneider is going to be a member of our community, and he will not be in jail for the rest of his life, even if had been convicted on all of the counts for which he was charged.
In the end, Schneider's victim could not be found and had no voice in the deal struck by the state. Whether she has ever recovered from the attack is unknown. But for Justin Schneider, his ordeal is over. According to court documents, after the assault, Schneider went to work at his job as an air traffic controller at Ted Stevens Anchorage International Airport. In court today, the prosecutor said he has lost that job and cannot work for the federal government again, something he called a life sentence. Joe?
Daniela, why wasn't Schneider required to register as a sex offender?
Well, the prosecutor said that's because he was never actually charged with a sexual offense. Even though the crime seemed sexually motivated, the case didn't meet the legal standards to be considered a sexual assault. The charges he was indicted on were assault, kidnapping, and harassment.
Now, this white boy, Justin Schneider, who isn't rich, because they love to say, well, it's the difference between rich and poor, not black and white. Well, Justin Schneider isn't rich beyond having the complexion for the protection. He has a regular job. Bill Cosby had a fortune, yet he was convicted. And this white boy, Justin Schneider, who is your average everyday white boy, and he gets a pass. Even though he actually admitted to the crime, the judge said, I'll let you go this time. Just don't do it again. This man who had held somebody against their will, choked them out against their will until they passed out, and then masturbated on them. They couldn't charge that as a sexual crime. And this white dude said, I needed her to feel like she was going to die. That was the only way I could get off. It's literally the same thing, except Bill Cosby didn't choke her out. She said he used pills. But they never called this 34-year-old white boy a violent sexual predator. He didn't even have to register as a sex offender. He got 1 year of probation, which they said he already did during the trial. And then he suspended his 2nd year, saying he hoped he got rehabilitated. He didn't have Bill Cosby money. He had the complexion for the protection. And even if you try to say they did it to send a message to the rich, even though Bill Cosby is the only rich person convicted, I don't know who else they even charged, even though people admitted to molesting children. There is a 79-year-old white boy, Lyle Burgess, who got caught raping a 5-year-old.
Bill Burgess pleaded no contest to felony statutory rape of a girl who is now just 7 years old. The longtime Stockton businessman was sentenced on Wednesday to just 90 days house arrest detention and 5 years of informal probation. He does not have to register as a sex offender.
A 5-6-year-old little girl was molested. Normally the sentence is state prison, and then when you're released, you have to register as a sex offender.
Fox 40 reached out to Deputy District Attorney Kathy Murray to find out why Burgess was charged with just statutory rape and why he wouldn't have to register as a sex offender. Murray deferred us to the media person who instructed us to put our questions in writing online. We haven't heard back yet.
Future victims are not protected.
We also went to Burgess's home in an upscale gated community in Stockton. Sorry, we just wanted to give him the courtesy that we're doing a story, and if he had any comment at all, we wanted to make sure we reflected his side because we're talking to the other side as well. No comment from the family at all? No comment. Okay.
He's obviously very wealthy, and it's just an example of how the wealthy people, time and time again, escape the penalty for what they did.
Burgess founded Rare Parts, Inc., an automotive parts manufacturer and distributor.
They trusted this man. He was a family friend, and he took advantage of him.
Maleko says the sex assault happened after the family was invited over to Burgess's Calaveras County cabin back in 2016. As far as how the young victim is doing now,
The girl is not doing good. She's showing all the symptoms of somebody who's been molested. She's in counseling, and she's going to be in counseling all her life.
Now, this 79-year-old white boy, Lyle Burgess, actually molested a 5-year-old, a family friend who the parents trusted. He was convicted and got 90 days probation. And they only convicted him of statutory rape, not molesting a 5-year-old. As if this 5-year-old consented, like this is a 20-year-old and a 16-year-old. This man was 79, and this little girl was 5 years old. And of course, he was not labeled a violent sex offender. And he, just like Justin Schneider, does not have to register as a sex offender. And it's not just because he's wealthy, it's because he has the complexion for the protection. Bill Cosby was rich. He was building wealth. He just didn't have the complexion for the protection. But at the end of the day, to black men, I don't understand how a lot of us still fall for the same traps over and over. With Bill Cosby, not to even mention that he was married, after all this time and everything that has happened, how could you still trust that situation? Historically, white women have been very dangerous to us, and a lot of us have gotten killed. Not only black men, but black women too. At some point, we might have to start listening to our sisters about that. Historically, they have used rape against us, and we have paid over and over and over again. And yet we as black men and black people as a whole still cape for white women so much. We let them play both sides of the fence. They talk about a patriarchal society because white men are at the top in this society. But we ignore them calling themselves minorities. Then they can just come in and take all the resources our ancestors fought for in the civil rights movement. White women have benefited the most from the civil rights movement. All that money Martin Luther King was generating from the government based off the civil rights movement in the 70s, they just ended up giving it to the feminists, to white women. But in this society, you can't talk about men and women being equal. When have black men ever had more power than white women in America? We were never higher on the social level than white women have been. Until the justice system is equal between black men and white women, they can't talk to me about equality and justice. Right now, today, a white woman can break into your house and shoot you and probably get away with it.
In America, protesting a police murder lands activists more jail time than the murderer.
Protests continue in the wake of the shooting and killing of a 26-year-old black man in his own apartment by a white Dallas police officer. The officer, Amber Geiger, has been charged with manslaughter after she entered Botham Shemjan's apartment less than 2 weeks ago and opened fire, killing him. Police claim the officer believed that his apartment was hers.
Now the police have found marijuana in Botham Jean's apartment. Typical. Botham Jean's death at the hands of the police made him a criminal, just like many black men who were killed by the police before him. If you want to better understand our broken two-tiered criminal justice system, look no further than the treatment of Amber Geiger, who was released an hour after killing Botham Jean, versus the 9 peaceful protesters who were arrested last night in Dallas and still haven't been released. This is the double standard. Amber can kill her neighbor with a service weapon and change her story multiple times and still get released for good behavior until she's arrested 3 days later, while her cop buddies try and paint the victim as a criminal for allegedly possessing a decriminalized substance that will soon be legal in every state. But those peacefully protesting this injustice, well, they're thrown in jail for longer than the murderer. Now understand the priorities here for a second. When a cop murders an innocent black man in his own home, police work overtime to beef up her defense and prove her innocence.
So this was the plan from the Dallas PD investigators from the beginning, is to look for ways to incriminate the person they just killed.
When people protest this fact, they're swiftly arrested and don't get released. Surprised? Well, you shouldn't be.
This is the normal playbook from American policing. When they're accused of criminal behavior themselves, the first step of cases is to criminalize the victim.
This is exactly why no one was shocked after an investigation found that Baltimore police officers carry toy guns around so that if they end up killing someone, they can just plant one on the victim. This is exactly why a Florida police chief can tell his officers to just pin unsolved crimes on random innocent black people. Amber Geiger is already out on a $300,000 bond, free to move out of her apartment and get a fair trial. Botham Jean, on the other hand, is dead. Those who are protesting injustice are still in jail as I'm writing this. If you can't see this double standard, you also probably can't understand how George Zimmerman is now going around signing Skittles wearing a Confederate flag t-shirt commemorating the death of his victim, Trayvon Martin, another innocent black teen slain for wearing a hoodie. Just another story where an innocent slain black teenager was portrayed as a criminal post-mortem. This is what happens when we criminalize being black and we paint their murderers as heroes. Even if a police officer walks into someone else's apartment and kills the resident in cold blood, the cop still has a chance of tasting freedom. And those who demand accountability get locked away swiftly because they're a nuisance.
But we as black men feeding into the gender wars allow white women to play both sides of the fence. And it's not just black men, it's black people in general. We let them play both sides of the fence. But until we actually do get on code, we're still going to be subject to their laws, their rules, and their punishments. And there's nothing we can do about it. At the end of the day, it's on us to figure out when it's going to stop.
A group of Alaska residents are trying to take a judge off the bench after a controversial sentence. 34-year-old Justin Schneider kidnapped a woman, strangled her until she was unconscious, and then masturbated on her. The incident occurred in August of 2017. Schneider accepted a plea deal last week, which includes no additional jail time. It also credited him for the year he spent at home with an ankle monitor while the case was pending. He was not required to register as a sex offender. Schneider did not apologize for his actions, but thanked the judge for accepting the deal.
I would just like to emphasize how grateful I am for this process. It has given me a year to really work on myself and become a better person and a better husband and a better father, and I'm very eager to continue that journey.
Attorney Jesse Weber joins me now to talk more about this. So, Jesse, I think people hearing the facts of this case will scratch their heads and say, how did the judicial system allow this to happen?
Pretty incredible. I can't believe we are talking about it. But from a legal perspective, it makes sense, even though the law sometimes doesn't make common sense. So he was charged with multiple counts, including kidnapping and harassment, which carries significant prison terms. But the DA made a decision. They said, if we take this to trial, we're probably going to lose. The kidnapping charge, she willingly entered into the car with him and willingly went to the area where she was ultimately assaulted. So they made the decision that we're not going to take this to trial. We're probably going to lose. Okay, let's do a plea deal. You're going to plead to the second highest crime, the second-degree assault, which is a Class B felony in Alaska. Sounds pretty serious. But for somebody like him, who has no criminal record, the most he could face, 2 years in prison. Now, one of those years, as you talked about, he was under house arrest. The next year was suspended. People are like, what does that mean? Yeah. Why suspended? Right. Well, it was suspended because based upon the guidelines in sentencing in Alaska, which shows there's a deficit in the judicial process there, if a person who has no criminal record and is prone to rehabilitation, the judge and the district attorney can decide, well, you know what? He doesn't have to go to jail. And that's what they decided here. So
is that the reason, basically, that the judge gave for that ruling?
They feel that he can be rehabilitated. But the major problem is this act is not a sex crime. And that's the problem. That's a problem with the legislator. Now, in one sense, it's a good thing that they never thought about this being a sex crime. On the other hand, this needs to change. These kinds of acts, if you look at the definition of what is touching, how is this not touching someone.
Right.
They're going to have to change that. That's the recommendation that they actually have to follow through with.
So disturbing. But what is the significance of this ruling, especially given the current political climate?
This is the height of the Me Too movement. We see it in and out of the news. We're talking about Judge Kavanaugh maybe not getting on the Supreme Court because of this very instance. So we have a guy who assaulted a woman in a sexual manner, and that can't be classified as a sex crime. This just shows a major deficit in the judicial process.
You know, Art, we have received so many questions and so many concerns from people who are just now hearing about this case and really the horrific details that are in these court documents. We may never know what went into this jury's decision, but we do know that now a convicted rapist will not be going to prison.
The message is disturbing.
Imagine going to the hospital for help with your asthma. You're under sedation and tethered to machines. Then you're raped. And as you try to call for help, you realize the call button to the nurse's station has been disabled.
People trust their doctors. People expect their doctors to take care of them.
Dr. Shafiq Sheikh was just found guilty of raping a woman back in 2013. Prosecutors urged jurors to sentence him to 20 years in prison. Instead, jurors decided on 10 years of probation, no jail time.
Did they really believe that she consented or not? Maybe some of the members of the jury still had doubts about that.
The judge has sealed the names of the 5 women and 7 men on the jury.
He's obviously not going to practice medicine again.
A Dallas City councilman described police, quote, gunning down residents in his opposition to pay raises for public safety employees.
Yeah, Councilman Lee Kleiman was referring to the Botham Jean shooting when he argued that across-the-board raises would reward the kind of police behavior citizens have been protesting. The Dallas Police Association is furious about the remarks. Fox 4's Lori Brown live at City Hall with the story. Lori.
Brandon, the Dallas Police Association president said that he's concerned that the comments from City Councilman Lee Kleiman could incite violence against police. Here's what the councilman had to say today before his colleagues approved pay raises for police and fire.
In a time right now when our community is really hurting, when our community is in the streets asking for justice, it just does not seem appropriate to reward that kind of behavior with an increase across the board. If you look at the number of arrests that have gone on in our police department this year, and then of course this horrible and horrifying incident that we've had down in the Cedars, how can we stand with our citizens while kowtowing to the bullies in these unions?
Kleiman did say he supports bringing starting pay for police and fire from $51,000 to $60,000 to compete with surrounding cities. But both he and Mayor Mike Rawlings voted against across-the-board raises for police. Kleiman went on to criticize the Dallas Police Association for providing legal representation for Officer Amber Geiger.
We have out-of-control associations and unions that close ranks and protect officers. They're really doing more than a disservice to this community, but gunning down members of our community. And we're going to give them a raise. Colleagues, it's shameful. It's shameful. We are now at yet another crossroads in this community between who do we support as a council? Our community, our citizens, our taxpayers, our residents, or just the union bosses who take advantage of a potential mayoral election and council election coming up, take advantage of this council in almost unfathomable ways.
To say anything that would incite violence, that would incite any type of negative reaction towards your public safety and be honest, their public safety and their family members, I think is below. I mean, I don't think he could get any worse. And the fact that the mayor did not in any way, shape, or form tell him that's enough or tell him that isn't useful or isn't reasonable in this officer, I think he failed it too. I think the police and the fire deserve better than that.
Mike Mata said it is not the role of the Dallas Police Association to determine if Officer Geiger is guilty or not guilty, but it is the association's role to provide legal coverage for her because the city does not provide funding for the defense of officers. Today's pay raises were part of the city's approval of the $1.3 billion budget.
Oh, snap. Can I use your phone? So
Any weapons or anything on you?
No, man.
You can drop their phone with Facebook Live and all that stuff down there.
Okay.
I ain't worried about your Facebook. We'll bet you down the street and the guns from knives.
You put us on Snapchat. Are we on live? Yeah. What? We're live?
Yeah.
Oh, man. We're famous.
I got 40 million views on a video of Waco PD.
Was that your video from the apartment? No way.
He's working.
That's too funny, man. I always wondered who put that up. Did he have it like out the window? Like so they could hear?
I almost had to shoot his black ass dude. He started acting, doing all that funny goddamn dancing shit out there, man. Fuck is this? Hang on. Oh, fuck. All this goddamn trash, nasty fucking nigger, dude. Trash. Gotta be some weed in here, dude. That ain't no weed, boy. I'm putting some in here. I swear to God, man. I put that on the squad, man. Uh-oh, jackpot, I found the purse. Fuck is this? Ain't got no goddamn shit in there.
Now he's retired, so now it's like everything's gonna blow over, but he said it while he was still here, so I don't think it was cool.
Some people who live in Fayetteville believe Danny Travis decided to retire the day he was put on suspension so he wouldn't have to deal with the consequences of him allegedly using the N-word towards a black officer.
Just get the easy way out of it. I'm gonna say this and then I'm about to retire. They can't do nothing to me. Kind of the way I feel about it, you know, I can't say anything provocative or anything, but seems like he knew what he was doing, basically.
Others who know Travis personally tell me they believe he's a good guy.
Racial slurs, we don't need them, you know, in this country. But I mean, this day and time, people take stuff probably a little more serious than what we, you know, over the years that we normally have. But
according to this Title VI complaint from police officer Austin McGee, Travis made racial slurs on a 911 phone call. He called Officer McGee the N-word surrounded by profanity. Ward 31 requested the 911 tape and were told we could have it, but it's Monday night and it still hasn't been given to us. City Administrator Scott Collins says he was supposed to meet with Travis Monday morning to decide if he'll continue as fire chief or be terminated.
However, over the weekend, Chief Travis contacted me and requested an earlier meeting at 8:00 a.m. and at which time he wished to submit his retirement letter.
Collins says Travis will receive his full benefits, which will come from taxpayers.
I don't think he should be using them, period. And as far as his benefits, I don't think he deserves to get it. Like, why say something like that? Like, I don't think anyone should use racial slurs and all that.
Danny, I understand he put in 36-some years in the fire department. I mean, he evidently he's done some things right. You know, he served the city as a regular fireman and a chief, too.
That's racist as shit. How did so little? Why did you can't understand that nigga is racist for a white man to say to a black man? That's fucking racist. Ian, would you say nigga? Would you ever say nigga? No. Corporate would never say nigga. Would you say nigga? Would y'all white people say nigga? Fuck no, they wouldn't say nigga. How dare you? Well, dude, you know what a commoditized word means? You explain it to me. That's a word that's used so many times that it doesn't mean it's original. It's used by black people. It's used by everyone. No, you use it. Don't say everyone. The word has become commoditized so that anyone can use it, and it's not a negative connotation. It's a negative-ass connotation. For you to say it to me is negative. Okay, when you hear it in a bunch of songs, are those people being negative when they use it? By black men. By black men. By black men. What does the word mean when they use it? My friend, by black men, white men, they say that shit. Eminem, who's a fucking rapper, he would never say nigga in a fucking song. He's a physical. And he said,
you say a word, it means friend. And if I say a word, that same word, it means something different.
Yes,
that's not true.
Just the fuck.
It's not. It's not true. It's not. It's not if you want the world to move on. If you want this world to be the way it was 50 years ago, then you're true.
The world is moving on because white people aren't saying nigga. If a white man says nigga, it's just not moving on. You say nigga is slavery. Nigger, I'm a fucking nigger. I'm a fucking nigger. You put me in slavery. That makes no fucking sense.
Nobody uses that word.
Yes, they do.
Nobody says nigger.
You just fucking say it!
You acting like
we're
having a conversation and you can say the word, but I can't.
You can't say nigger or fucking nigger.
Calling somebody
the whole reason I'm your fucking race was my fucking teacher. Don't say that shit.
I'm not calling you anything.
I don't give a fuck.
No one's calling
you
anyone ever.
You said it. You said it.
Dude, if we're in a class and I'm teaching you, hey, the word nigger is an old. Dude, please, it's a word, bro. You cannot go through life and act like a word.
Stop fucking saying that shit.
Can affect you.
Stop saying nigger and nigger. Plain fucking period.
You keep saying it.
I can say it.
I said it one time.
You missed the conversation.
This conversation completely.
We had a whole assembly. We were talking about basketball. We had assembly after school.
25 times.
I can say it. I'm black.
I want to talk to you guys in this video. It's been so hard. If it was possible. It was so hard. It's probably the hardest things I've ever done. I'm so sorry. So sorry to you guys. I'm so sorry for disappointing you. It hurts me so bad to disappoint you all who have supported me for so many years and know that I'm better than that person. 6 years ago, decided to retweet things that were so vile and hurtful. I was so stupid and ignorant, and I have no excuses here today. I'm not here to give you an excuse. I have no excuses. I'm only here to say that I'm so sorry. And I hope one day that you guys can save me for the woman that I am. And that I can prove to you guys that I'm not that girl. I love you guys so much. And whenever I see I disappointed you, it just breaks my heart into a million pieces. I'm so sorry for anyone that's been hurt through this. Anyone. I feel so just disappointed that I don't even like to look at myself because I can't even believe that I would retweet ugly things and be, things that would hurt people. I can't believe I didn't see the pain behind that kind of tweet and that kind of behavior. I did, and I'm so sorry. There's no excuse. There's nothing I can say that's an excuse. I'm just sorry. I did that 6 years ago. I wish it was better 6 years ago, but I can't pray for the past. I can only pray for the future.
Racist symbol, but the vast majority of people believe that it's a symbol of heritage, it's a symbol of our history that people think is associated with the South, and the South was fighting for slavery. That's a common misconception about what actually took place. When you study the history, that was one thing that the war was about. People don't go to war for one issue. I'm not a historian. You're putting me on the spot for something
Mm-hmm. So we got one thing that the war is about, slavery. What are two other things that the war is about?
The Confederate, in general, the war was about tyranny.
What is tyranny?
Tyranny is any time a government overreaches and they control a life too much.
Like slavery.
All right, and we back on the forecast. So in Chicago, a brother named Howard Morgan, who happens to be a cop, but he ended up getting shot 28 times by 4 other Chicago police officers. So let's see how a black cop could end up getting shot by 4 white cops 28 times.
Since February 2005, Railroad Police Officer Howard Morgan has been in a battle for his life.
My husband, Howard Morgan, was shot 28 times by 4 white police officers. They said that he was going down a one-way street with his lights off.
Rosalind Morgan says what should have been a routine traffic stop turned into a nightmare for her family.
He identified himself as a police officer. They did not believe him. They shoved him down to the ground, removed his weapon from him. The shooting began at that point.
Doctors at Mount Sinai Hospital say Officer Morgan was shot 21 times in the back parts of his body and 7 times in the front. He underwent multiple surgeries to correct his injuries. Craig Futterman, attorney and clinical professor at the University of Chicago Law School, says that police brutality cases are common in Chicago. Cases like Howard Morgan's are rare.
On average, over the years, people have brought about 2,000 or so complaints of police brutality each and every year.
Futterman says this is just a small fraction of those who have been harassed by the police. After spending months in the hospital chained to his bed, Officer Morgan was sent to a Cook County Corrections Facility and was charged with attempted murder. Now the Morgans rely on lawyers, their church, and activist groups to help in this fight for justice during the court trials. Bishop Bansa has been providing spiritual counseling for the Morgans.
As a spiritual leader, my job was to encourage, support, and let them know they weren't in it alone.
As he waits for his next court appearance in his attempt to clear his name, Officer Morgan continues to deal with emotional and physical struggles.
If double jeopardy doesn't mean anything and your constitutional rights are violated, then what does America stand for? This is his past, the present, and we want to keep him free for the future so that this story can be told.
So this man, Howard Morgan, who was a cop for 21 years, was pulled over by 2 other Chicago police officers minutes away from his house. And according to the police, they pulled him over because he was driving up a one-way with no lights on, which doesn't make sense because he lived around the area. He would know what one-way streets are and with no lights. Howard Morgan said he thought the police were going to pass him, but the 4 cops, John Wrigley, Eric White, Timothy Finley, and Nicholas Olson, approached him. He said he tried to tell him he was a cop, but they didn't believe him. And then the police claimed he got belligerent when they tried to arrest him. I don't know why they were arresting him for, but they said he got belligerent and he opened fire. But this brother Howard Morgan said they pulled him out of the car and they restrained him when he tried to show him his police identification. He said one cop found his police-issued gun and he yelled gun and then took it from his waistband. The only witness they could find to testify backed up what this brother Howard Morgan said. She said she saw the cop snatch him from his van and force him on his knees. And then she said she heard the cop say, "Oh shit, he's got a gun," and then open fire on him while he laid on the ground. And the physical evidence backs him up because he was shot 21 times in the back. He was shot 28 times in total. And there's no telling how many bullets they fired, at least 57. But they were shooting so much, at least 3 cops got shot themselves. But the police story is he shot first, but he denies it, and the witness backs him up. And even though he had no criminal record, this man was a cop. And even though he was shot 28 times and actually lived to tell the story, they actually ended up charging him with attempted murder.
Another resident case involving police shooting was heard on Tuesday in Chicago regarding the excessive use of force on Howard Morgan. Almost 10 years ago, he was pulled over by 4 police officers, forced from his car and shot 28 times, with most of the bullets entering his back. Officers claim Morgan pulled out his gun while an independent witness testified that he never fired a weapon. In 2012, Morgan was sentenced to 40 years in prison for attempted murder. We can now speak to his wife, Rosalind Morgan. Welcome to the programme, first and foremost. How did the hearing go today?
The hearing went well today. Attorney Benjamin Crump was there representing my husband, Howard Morgan, and the judge will render a decision at another time. It would not be today, but I am confident that all will be well with this decision. It was dismissed regarding the civil, and today we were asking that she enter it back on the dockets today because of the grave situation. My husband is innocent. He was acquitted of shooting his weapon in 2007. He's a police officer for the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad. He's still alive after sustaining 28 bullets that pierced his body in February the 21st of 2005 around the corner from our home. He was going home and they pulled him over for alleged traffic violation. They said he was going the wrong way down a one-way street, and he identified himself as a police officer, and he had no cause to arrest him at all. After all, he was a police officer. However, there were 4 white Chicago police officers against 1 black railroad police officer. There was no reason to stop him, number 1. Number 2, they charged him with 4 counts of first-degree attempted murder, 3 counts of aggravated battery, and 1 count of aggravated discharge of his weapon. There was a $2 million bond put on Officer Howard Morgan. He has never been arrested. There's no criminal record at all. They did a toxicology report. There was no alcohol or drugs in his body.
Can we just talk about your husband for a moment, Miss Morgan, because how is he doing? When was the last time you saw him or heard from him?
I saw him Sunday, November the 21st. He's in Dixon Prison, sentenced to 40 years for something he did not do. After all, he was acquitted of shooting his weapon and acquitted of aggravated battery against 2 of the officers. He is not well at all. Remember, 28 bullets. He sleeps, and they burst his eardrum, and he had a large laceration on his leg when this happened. At this point, my husband is not doing well in prison. Anyone that's ever been there, it's a miserable setting. However, and to know that you are innocent, this entire injustice, this has got to ring out all over the world regarding it.
Just on that, do you think race had something to do with the way police officers conducted themselves with your husband?
Absolutely, because he is a police officer, number 1. They did not give him professional courtesy. He identified himself as a police officer. Yes, I do believe it was a total race card used. It was an attempted assassination on him. Why? Driving while black? I do not understand. This entire injustice is ludicrous.
And these recent protests that we're seeing, do you believe they could lead to even more public attention, maybe towards what happened to your husband, and create pressure that could set him free?
I'm hoping so, that this will take place, that the entire world will know of the injustice that is inflicted upon Howard Morgan. After all, I truly believe this in my heart. My husband does not deserve that. We have 2 children, 3 grandchildren, and I don't want my husband, he's now 63 years of age, to die in prison for something that he did not do because of the color of his skin. And because of that alone, he should be free. He's innocent of the crimes that they have placed on him. There was a first trial, the second trial. The jurors were not of his peers. There were 10 Caucasian jurors and 2 Afro-American jurors. that is not jurors of his peers. The evidence that was used against my husband, the vest that they said one of the officers that my husband allegedly shot, that vest never appeared in court. The van that he was in that night, they destroyed the van. An independent forensic individual could not check it because they destroyed that.
Okay.
Why was the evidence destroyed?
Now, after shooting his brother Howard Morgan 28 times, he was the one on trial for attempted murder. It didn't matter if he was a cop, all that back to blue stuff went right out the window. And the cops looking out for themselves have some kind of limit to it. They tried to do a toxicology report on him, but he didn't have any drugs in the system. And it was hard to criminalize him because he wasn't a criminal. And even though they charged him with attempted murder, they didn't even check his hands for gunpowder. They didn't even check the gun. Somehow his van came up missing, and all of the evidence came up missing. But even though he was a cop, he doesn't have the complexion for the protection. In 2007, a jury found him not guilty of firing his gun, and 10 of the jurors said he was not guilty of attempted murder. But 2 jurors didn't agree, and they called it a hung jury, and they declared it a mistrial. So in 2012, they actually retried him for attempted murder, and even though he already been found not guilty of firing his gun, it took a jury of 10 white people 3 hours to find him guilty. And he ended up getting sentenced to 40 years for getting shot by the police. This man, Howard Morgan, was in the hospital handcuffed to the bed. And they originally gave him a $2 million bail, which they did reduce because he got shot 28 times. But he survived all of that just to get 40 years. Eventually, in 2015, after he already did 3 years, the governor did pardon him on his last day in office. And the cops who actually shot him 28 times and the police unions, they were pissed this governor let him out of jail.
Tonight, an Eyewitness News exclusive. A lot of emotions go through my mind. Anger, betrayal, and just complete, utter disbelief. A police officer shares his frustration tonight as the man serving time for shooting him is released from prison. Good evening. Howard Morgan was released this afternoon from prison.
Eyewitness News reporter Paul Mackey joins us with an exclusive interview with officer injured in the shootout with Morgan. Paul?
Cheryl, of the 43 clemency petitions that Pat Quinn granted on his final day in office, the case of Howard Morgan was one of the most unexpected and most controversial. It's a case that involves the incendiary mix of race, politics, a man who nearly lost his life, and 4 cops who came close to losing theirs. And now, a decision that has no public explanation from the man who made it. Howard Morgan walked out of prison this afternoon, his 40-year sentence for the attempted murder of 4 Chicago police officers commuted by former Governor Quinn.
I'm just thankful to all that have dealt with these trials and tribulations these almost 10 years now.
Morgan's freedom has his family and supporters rejoicing. It has outraged others. Among them, Chicago police officer John Wrigley, one of 3 cops shot and wounded by Morgan in a fateful encounter 10 years ago next month. Police and prosecutors didn't know Quinn was even considering clemency for Morgan, and they likely will never know why.
I was never asked any questions. I was never given a chance to give my side of the story or tell what I know to be the facts of the case, the true facts of the case.
Officer down, officer down, officer down. What began as something of a traffic stop turned into a scuffle and then gunfire 10 years ago. Police say that Howard Morgan, a former Chicago cop, was immediately belligerent, went for his gun and fired first. What followed was an exchange of dozens of shots fired. Morgan claimed that the police were the provocateurs shooting without reason. But a jury convicted Morgan. Now the former governor has ordered him freed, and Pat Quinn is under no legal obligation to explain why.
The governor has absolute power to make a decision on clemency whenever he wants, however he wants, for whatever reason he wants, and it's been tested in the courts.
Former Prisoner Review Board Chair Jorge Montes says controversial decisions are a sign of leadership, and he applauds Quinn for tough choices. But police and prosecutors call this one a choice done behind their backs, and they have questions for Quinn.
Why do you think he needed to be released? Why do you think that he deserved to be released? Did you sit in on the trial? Did you look at the details of this case? I don't think he did.
There have been legal challenges in the past to the governor's executive clemency powers, most notably when George Ryan, over a decade ago, granted blanket clemency to everyone on death row at the time. The courts ruled then that the governor's clemency authority was a constitutional absolute. So even if parties wish to appeal this, they really don't have a legal foundation to do so.
Now, even though this brother Howard Morgan was a cop, he wasn't a criminal at all. All that back to blue stuff went right out the window because he didn't have the complexion for the protection. And these cops, even though they weren't charged at all, and even though he was found not guilty of shooting his gun, he's still mad this black man gets to walk out of jail. And even though this governor did give him clemency, and he had to wait till his last day in office to do that, he still didn't overturn his conviction. So this brother still has attempted murder on his record, even though he's the one shot up and disabled for life. The Illinois State Attorney Anita Alvarez said she was angry with the governor's decision. The Chicago Fraternal Order Police President Dean Angelo said it was a slap in the officer's face that shot him 28 times. When you don't have the complexion for the protection, that back to blue stuff doesn't work for you. It doesn't matter if you're a black cop, you can't escape from it. It's hard to fix the system from within the system because if you're a cop, you're just upholding the laws of white supremacy. Until we can build our own police force to protect us and serve us. But until we stop being divided and conquered, then we will never have the complexion for the protection. We have to protect ourselves. And until we can agree that our safety and our future is more important than the things we disagree on, we're going to continue to be under their rules, their laws, and their punishments.
Hi, my name is Chandler Tucker, and we are here with former police officer Howard Morgan, who on February 21st, 2005, experienced an American tragedy. Please tell us what happened.
Well, on the night was the morning of February 21st, 2005, I was stopped, presumably by 4 Chicago police officers on my way home, and I was only half a block from my house when I pulled over after I saw the emergency lights come on behind me to let them pass by. And when they stopped their vehicle across from mine, they got out of their vehicles with guns pointing at my direction. I identified myself as a police officer to them. And at that time, they snatched me out the van, out of my vehicle, started beating me, burst my eardrum, and shot me 28 times. 21 of those times in the back, even while holding me down to the ground, they were shooting me. First of all, they took me to the hospital and checked me in as John Doe after taking my police identification. After checking me into the hospital as John Doe, with them having my police identification in their possession, they proceeded to try to attack me during the time period I was in the hospital.
What went through your mind as this was happening?
Well, what went through my mind as this was happening was bizarre, because it shouldn't have been happening. That's what really threw me off after being a police officer for 21 years and then being attacked by 4 Caucasian police officers for no reason at all. And I'm only a half a block away from my home, which I was going to, and it was just, it wasn't realistic. That's why they didn't expose me as a police officer, because they knew in their minds they had messed up. We're going to hold ID. We're not going to contact his department. We're going to just end as John Doe. He's unacceptable. It's a shame that it takes film to show this now after all the deaths of all the young black people and various Spanish individuals, but it never happens to Caucasians.
Prosecutors presented body camera video as evidence against a fired Mesquite police officer who shot an unarmed man. Hello, everybody. I'm Heather Hayes.
Good evening. I'm Brandon Todd. The video is key evidence at the former officer's trial. Derek Wiley shot Lindo Jones during a call about a burglary in progress last November. Well, it turns out Jones was not a burglar. He was sitting in his own truck trying to fix a problem that had set the alarm off. Wiley is charged with aggravated assault by a public servant. Fox 4's James Rose is at the Frank Crowley Courts building with today's testimony. James.
Well, Brandon, prosecutors say Officer Derek Wiley was unreasonable throughout his entire encounter with Lindo Jones. And they produced a number of videos, including his body camera video, to help make that point. Now, Wiley's attorneys say his client acted very reasonable under the circumstances, especially the split-second decision he had to make to shoot. Former Mesquite police officer Derek Wiley's own body camera is being used against him at trial. The video played in court shows Officer Wiley confronting Lindo Jones during a call about a suspicious person. Wiley orders Jones, who's inside his own pickup truck, to get out.
Open the door! Put your hands up, or I will shoot you. But get out the truck and get on the ground. Get on the ground. I don't give a about it being wet. Get on the ground. Put your hands on your head. Turn over on your stomach.
Prosecutors say Wiley acted unreasonably from the time he got the call by turning down backup and approaching Jones with his gun drawn as he yelled commands. Prosecutors say Jones complied until Wiley put his knee on a pressure point in his back, causing Jones to struggle and attempt to run away. We've frozen the video at the moment it shows Jones being shot.
Put your hands behind your back. Put your hands behind your back, yes you can. Bro, what are you doing, bro? What are you doing, bro? What are you doing, man? Hold up, bro. Hey, man. Hold up. Stop me, bro. Y'all don't do shit. 451, shots fired. Shots fired.
The lead Mesquite investigator testified about his concerns that Wiley shot an unarmed man twice in the back without an explanation.
When you watch that video, is it clear to you that Derek Wiley intended to shoot Lindo Jones?
Yes.
That was his intention?
Yes.
He pointed the gun at Lindo Jones and pulled the trigger twice, correct?
Yes. Prosecutors also showed jurors the account Wiley gave to Mesquite investigators.
When I grabbed my handcuffs, he just slipped out, and I'm thinking that he's trying to get to his weapon.
Wiley told investigators he feared for his life and seemed to think Jones did have a gun.
When he swung up with his hands facing me, I thought it could be a weapon. And I thought he's going to kill me. And I fired.
But that account appears to differ from what he said on his own body camera to the first arriving officers on the scene.
Yeah, he's still conscious. No, I can't see. I can't really see, though.
Now, when that Mesquite lead investigator was cross-examined by the defense, he testified that it took 3 to 4 officers to hold Jones down, Jones, who'd been shot twice in the back. They said he was that active, and that was suggesting that Jones may have been on drugs. Now, Lindo Jones is expected to take the stand tomorrow.
Give me your stop.
Man, it's over.
Put your goddamn hands behind your back.
See, I don't want how you cuss at people.
Put your hands behind your... I'm going to take you.
And don't take pictures.
I'm getting ready to take you behind your back. Put your hands behind your back.
That's not right.
Just put your hands behind your back, honey.
Baby, put your hands around your back.
Put your hands behind your
Don't say nothing. He ain't do nothing. He ain't do nothing. Shut up. He ain't do nothing. He ain't do nothing.
Oh my God. Oh my
He
God.
ain't do
Oh my
nothing.
God.
Stop. Leave that boy alone. Call the...
Oh my God.
He ain't do nothing. He didn't really do nothing.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
It ain't that serious. It sure wasn't.
Might be quiet.
You should have been recording it, baby.
I recorded all of it. Man, who is this?
They just want somebody, that's all. Y'all need to stop.
Mama, they.
I don't care, shit.
They not gonna stop because you telling them to stop.
Man.
Saving this. What in the world did I just witness? What in the world did I just witness? But the thing about it is, he did the same thing I done did before. He speak. Ariel, your arm in the way. First you telling the man to put his hands behind his back, then you telling him to show you his what he supposed to do. I swear they don't know how to police.
New tonight, a local pastor cut up Nike gear during his Sunday sermon. This comes after Nike launched an ad campaign with Colin Kaepernick, an athlete who kneels during the national anthem. NBC 15's Muriel Bailey joins us live now. Muriel, you sat down with this pastor today.
I did, Kim, and he says his phones have been ringing off the hook with people upset about his stance.
I got news for you. I bought my last pair of Nike shoes.
During his Sunday sermon, Pastor Mac Morris of Woodridge Baptist Church told his congregation what he thinks about Nike inking a deal with a controversial athlete.
I got Nike wristbands, sweatbands.
Afterwards, he got a standing ovation. We sat down with Morris. He says cutting the Nike gear was a symbolic gesture of cutting ties with Nike.
I can no longer support them because I feel they are in support of someone who is disrespectful of our flag and all that it stands for.
And he says he has a right to express his opinion. Nike recently launched an advertising campaign with Colin Kaepernick. Kaepernick is a professional football player whose kneeling during the national anthem at NFL games sparked controversy. Kaepernick says it's his way of protesting injustice for black people and minorities in the U.S. Morris says his stance is not about race. In fact, he says he doesn't know what Kaepernick identifies as, and he doesn't even know why he kneels.
I'm not sure what he's protesting. I've asked a lot of people, and not many people are sure.
Morris says since his symbolic gesture, he has received support, but also a lot of backlash.
Oh my goodness, my email and everything is blown up. Some of my secretaries, our staff, have taken calls that were just terrible calls, really ugly. It's turning out to be a racial thing, unfortunately.
Does it make you wish you would have not said anything?
Nope. I'm glad I did it.
And when it comes to Nike, recent reports show that Nike sales have actually increased by 31% since they launched that ad.
Now to a family who says they are fed up with their neighbor.
Yeah, they tell us this neighbor has called 911 on them more than 20 times in the past 5 months. They say they moved into the Summerwood subdivision last November and believe the neighbor is sending them a not-so-subtle message that they are not welcome.
Marcelino Benito is live in the neighborhood tonight with this exclusive story. Marcelino.
Well, guys, this family says they have been harassed for months, and tonight we finally know the Precinct 3 Constable's office is taking a look and investigating. Every time the music turns up, it's 7 in the morning, y'all. And Javon Cofield decides to invite family over to his own house. One of his neighbors calls the cops.
They've been out here 17 times.
17. We checked, and actually it's been even more than that. The Precinct 3 Constable's office tells us they've responded to more than 20 noise complaint calls made by Javon's neighbor.
Oh, it's worse every time.
But Precinct 3 tells us Javon and his family have never done anything wrong.
I feel like I'm being harassed by the person that's making the calls.
The call started when he moved into the Summerwood subdivision last November.
Hey, man, we Facebook Live once again. My neighbors done called the laws on me.
He started documenting each time deputies showed up.
It's so bad the family's used to them coming. The family greet them. Hey, how you doing? Okay, back to playing cards.
But now he says things have gone too far. Javon feels targeted, trapped, and discriminated against in his own home.
They don't want me here if you've been called out 17 times.
Precinct 3 confirmed to us where the calls were coming from, so we paid that neighbor a visit to get some answers. The man said he didn't want to talk about that with me. But now Precinct 3 involved in looking into what's behind this neighbor's series of bogus calls against Javon and his family.
It needs to stop. Enough is enough, man. That's all I'm saying.
Now, our legal analyst says there are options for people that may be going through this type of thing. He says you can try to seek a temporary restraining order against your neighbor or even hire a lawyer and try suing him or her for slander.
I don't care. You don't care? I don't belong to here. I don't like here. Like a monkey people. I don't like. I'm very Kenyan, even Anna. And again, this is all the Kenyans. Like a monkey. Even Uhuru, Kenyatta. All of them. It's like a monkey? Yeah, sure. Even if you don't fire me? No, I will fire you after probation. Smell is bad, and poor, and foolish, and black. Then why are you coming to do business in Kenya if we are poor, we are black, for money?
Just taking land from someone is theft. No more, no less. So he believes you can't, no matter how bad the injustices were in the past, you can't fix it by grabbing.
And that is madness. How does taking my car, which you stole from you, become a theft? You steal my car, I come and take it. I find it, I take it. In Tara's mind, that is theft. I mean, that is insane. We're not stealing anything. We're taking what is rightfully ours. But I'm not taking my car and leaving you stranded. I give you a ride. This is my car, I'm taking it.
Without compensation? How are you getting a ride?
No, I'm giving you a ride. We're driving together. I won't leave you here stranded. Yes. Why should I compensate a criminal? You steal my car, you want money from me to buy it. You're committing more crime by wanting me to buy from you.
Because that was one of the fundamental things in '94, which was, okay, we press reset from Madiba. White people, you've been born into privilege, but you don't bear the sins of your forefathers. Let's work together. You contest that.
Hey, Chief, I was not there in 1994. I was not there when Madiba clinched deals with those people. Right. If there is any commitment Mandela made with them and then we are going against it, they must go to Mandela. We don't owe them anything. We have no agreement with them. Nothing. And we're not bound by Mandela's resolutions at all. We're not bound by the decisions taken in the negotiations. We're not there. We are here now. And we are going to chart a way forward and determine our own destiny. Madiba did what he had to do. The conditions then maybe were not favorable for him to do what we are doing now. And we are not Mandela. I think people should get that very clear. We're not Mandela, and we're not going to do Mandela things here. We're doing our own thing now. And this will benefit our children. We are so uncompromising about that. We've compromised for far too long. And what is even worse is that those who are in possession of the land are refusing to release it. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I'm saying to you, we've not called for the killing of white people, at least for now. I can't guarantee the future.
Yeah, but I mean, you'd understand somebody watching that, especially as it gets shared on Twitter, they freak out. It sounds like a genocidal call.
Cry babies. Cry babies.
I'm not calling for the slaughter of white people, at least for now.
I can't give a guarantee of the future, especially when things are going the way they are.
Subtext.
Especially if things are going the way they are, there will be a revolution in this country, I can tell you now. There will be an unled revolution. An unled revolution is the highest form of anarchy.
But if black men ever would decide to define a black man in black terms, I think they would have different expectations of us as women. I went to the opening of an African exhibit at the Brooklyn Museum and noticed only about a dozen black men in the crowd of at least 200 people. And I thought to myself, how odd, no black men. Then I looked at the exhibit piece by piece and began to think I understood something. There was a beautiful door from the Congo, and looking at that door, I saw a man, a woman, several children in the yard, and this white man saying, "Your door is an excellent example of the Kashana people's art, and I must take it back to Amsterdam." And this beautiful African, barefoot, with perhaps an earring in his left ear, replies, "But this door is the door to my house, and it is not for sale." And the woman, sensing something, stops the grinding of grain and begins gathering the children around her, while the white man goes on with, "I must have the door. The museum needs it, and I can make 50 dinars on it." And the African rises to his full height on his long, light legs, tribal markings dancing slightly on his face, eyes clear and hard, saying, "My family needs this door. It is mine. My father left it to me as his father did him. You may not have it. It is not for sale." And the cracker turns in a rage to leave. Then 2, perhaps 3 days later, the missionary comes up saying, "My son, your door is needed in a great country far away from here. You will be blessed by our Heavenly Father if you give your door to the merchant." And this magnificent African, stooping by his doorway, playing with one of his children, shakes his head. "I would be cursed by my ancestors. Go now, go away and leave us in peace." Then in the night the soldiers come with the guns. The African responds with a spear. The fire acts from the barrel. The woman screams. The children scatter, asking what is the matter. The man is stretched out in a pool of dark, murky liquid, and the door is taken down, hoisted upon the shoulders of the black mercenaries, walked to the sea, and freighted back to Amsterdam, so that it can be borrowed by the United States of America to show how the people in Kashana lived in 1582. And I begin to understand why so few black men had come, because it was not a door at all, but dead ancestors murdered in their homes that they would see. Not a statue from Nigeria, but a raped woman, a slit throat, a burned village. And even as I saw that, I knew I would never understand the reality of being a black man. Men grow beards to protect the throat, have hair on their chest to protect the heart, have afros to cushion the head blows. And these things become aesthetically acceptable, if not preferable, but they always have their groundings in survival. My man and I can walk down the street together, and if some guy says something out of the way to me, it's an insult. To him, it could be his life. I can walk away from words and gestures and still be a woman. He cannot and still be a man. So little of a black man's existence relies on his acts. His women, mother, sister, lovers control his life, and generally so irresponsibly that it can be frightening. And sometimes black women aren't very nice for a lot of reasons. And sometimes we use our power against him for a lot of reasons. And I think some of the hostility is real and must be related to as such. We're angry, and so are they, but it's only when we admit it that we can get anywhere. I don't think a woman cares where she walks if you let her walk with you, and I don't think a man cares that a woman talks if she'll talk to him. And if we really understand we are born men and women, and it's our choice whether or not we stay that way, I think a lot will change. If now isn't a good time for the truth, I don't see when we're going to get to it, because I don't want my son to be a warrior, or to go to some school where some insensitive teacher asks him why I'm not married, or where some cracker thinks he can run my son down anytime, any kind of way he pleases. We need some happiness in our lives, some hope, some love. I didn't have a baby to see him be cannon fodder. Something more must be decided. If it's a real war, then he must be brave and true. If it's a mental war, he must be black and proud. But if it's the Wake the People Up war, Martin Luther King did that. Malcolm X did that. Stokely Carmichael did that. Rap Brown did it. And if people aren't awake, then perhaps the dreams are too good to be disturbed again. Perhaps black people don't want revolution at all. That too must be considered.
All right, and we back on the forecast. Now, at the end of the day, we're going to have the courage to do what we have to do. Our ancestors already left a blueprint on how to accomplish things. White people didn't want their money. They were forced to spend it with each other, and they became millionaires. Today, we have the illusion of inclusion. And we, as a people, always have this forgiveness. If we were as violent as they say we were, we would never be in this situation. But we suffer from having our identities destroyed. But even if you look at our history here in America, we did all the things we say we need to do. We needed a strong family. We needed an economic base. We had those things, but we still suffer from white supremacy. We need to build these things, but we need to learn how to protect it. Because if you can't protect it, it doesn't matter what you build. They will always come to destroy it. And it doesn't matter if you're a cop or not, if you're a good person or not, if you're armed or not, if you're rich or not. You still live in a white supremacy society. It doesn't matter what you call yourself. Calling yourself a different name isn't going to matter. Even if you come up with a new name, it'll become derogatory and it'll mean slave in this society because that's what they see us as. But as long as we keep looking at ourselves through a European lens and thinking our problems can equal their problems, when we can't afford to have the same kind of problems they have, then we're going to continue to be under their rules and their punishments. At the end of the day, we have to realize we're all we got. So, as always, man, we have got to start standing for something, or we're going to keep falling for anything.